Marcus Chen had spent 6 months planning his daughter's graduation party. 6 months of spreadsheets, Pinterest boards, and conversations with his ex-wife about what Emma deserved after the hell of the past year. Cancer diagnosis, remission, uncertainty, then finally June and a diploma. A reason to celebrate. The backyard was his sanctuary. The house sat on 3 acres of pristine property in Westchester County, the kind of place that took years to get right. He'd installed the saltwater pool himself, 12,000 gallons of crystal blue escape. The landscaping had cost more than some people's cars. Mature trees created natural shade. The deck wrapped around like a warm embrace, teak and weathered to silver-gray perfection. Emma's party was scheduled for Saturday, June 15th. He'd invited 45 people, family, close friends, her graduation class. Intimate, meaningful. He'd even hired a caterer who specialized in farm-to-table food, a live DJ to keep things classy, and had the pool professionally cleaned and maintained. The invitation list had been curated with love. None of this mattered now, because on Friday afternoon, Marcus received a call from his neighbor, Patricia Edmonds. "Marcus, honey, I wanted to give you a heads up." Patricia had that tone, the one that meant something was wrong. She used it when she'd found his dog on her property and when she'd warned him about the contractor who was overcharging. Patricia was good people. "My daughter told me about Jennifer's party tomorrow, the big one, the one Jennifer's throwing." Marcus's stomach dropped. "What do you mean, the one Jennifer's throwing?" "Well, Jennifer's throwing a party tomorrow at her place." Patricia paused. There was something she wasn't saying. "Except, I don't think it's at her place." Jennifer Hartley was his ex-wife's best friend. They'd been friends since college. When Marcus and his ex-wife separated 5 years ago, there was a cordial split. No dramatics, no custody wars. Emma split her time between both homes. The arrangement worked. But in the last year, as Marcus's career had taken off and his financial situation had improved dramatically, things had shifted. Jennifer had always been the kind of woman who needed to win. In high school, she'd been voted most likely to succeed. In college, she'd graduated with honors. In her career as a real estate agent, she'd consistently crushed sales records. But somewhere along the way, success had curdled into something meaner, a need to be seen as the most successful, the most important, the most envied. "Patricia," Marcus said slowly, "what are you trying to tell me?" "I'm telling you that Jennifer is throwing a pool party tomorrow at your property. And from what my daughter tells me, she's invited more than 100 people." The phone felt heavy in his hand. "How is that possible? I own the property. I have the only code to the gate." Patricia's silence was answer enough. He called Jennifer immediately. She answered on the 3rd ring, and in the background, Marcus could hear her talking to someone else, laughing. When she registered his number, her tone shifted to something performative. "Marcus, I was just thinking about you." "Jennifer, what is going on? Patricia just told me you're throwing a party at my house tomorrow." There was a beat. Then, "Not at your house, at the property. The gate might be yours, but—" "The property is in my name, Jennifer. I bought it outright." "And your daughter lives there half the week," Jennifer said smoothly. "Which makes it a family property, and Emma invited me to celebrate her graduation with her friends. It's really not that complicated." Marcus could feel the trap closing. Legally, she might actually have some ground here. Emma did live on the property during her time with him. Emma might have, in a moment of distraction or politeness, given Jennifer permission. Jennifer was smart enough to have covered her bases. "How many people?" he asked, voice controlled. 200, maybe 250. "It's a celebration, Marcus. We're celebrating your daughter's accomplishments, unless you have a problem with that." The way she said it, that patronizing lilt, made his blood pressure spike. Unless he had a problem with that, as if he were the unreasonable one. As if his objections to a stranger throwing a massive, uninvited party on his property would make him look like a killjoy. "I'll call you back," Marcus said and hung up. He sat in his office, hands shaking. The light outside his window was gold-slanted, that perfect quality of late spring afternoon that used to make him feel peaceful. Now it felt ominous. He pulled up his security camera footage from the driveway and watched. There, from 11 that morning, was Jennifer's Range Rover, making trip after trip through the gate. She'd somehow obtained the code. He didn't know how, maybe from Emma, maybe from his ex-wife, maybe she'd paid someone. It didn't matter. What mattered was that she'd done it without asking, without permission, with the kind of entitled confidence that only certain kinds of people possessed. He called Emma. "Dad, hi, I was about to call you," Emma said, breathless with excitement. "Jennifer is throwing me this amazing party tomorrow." "Jennifer asked you first, right? Before she started setting everything up." There was a pause. "Not exactly. She kind of surprised me with the idea. She said she wanted to do something really big, like a real celebration. I told her she was crazy, but then she was like, 'Why not? Your dad has that amazing pool and you live there, so why not?' And I was like, 'Okay.'" Emma's voice had taken on an uncertain quality, like she was realizing belatedly that this might not have been the best decision. "She said she was going to surprise you, but that you'd be fine with it because it's for me." Marcus closed his eyes. There it was, the psychological manipulation wrapped in a bow. She'd positioned it as a gift for Emma, made it about Emma's graduation, her accomplishment, her celebration. If he objected to his own daughter's happiness. It was brilliant in its cruelty. "Em, I have something planned for tomorrow," Marcus said carefully. "A party, for you, with people you actually know and love." "I know, but like, Jennifer's party sounds so cool, and so many people are coming, and there's going to be a DJ and a caterer, and Jennifer's doing this without my permission, honey, on my property, without asking." Emma was quiet. Then, "Are you going to be weird about it?" The words stung because they were exactly what Jennifer had probably wanted Emma to feel, that her father was being difficult, unreasonable, a party pooper, that his objections were petty compared to her generosity. "I'm not going to be weird about it," Marcus said, even though he absolutely was. "But we need to talk about boundaries. Just because people are our friends doesn't mean they can use our things without asking." "Okay," Emma said in that noncommittal way teenagers have when they're done with a conversation. "So is it cool? Can we have both parties?" He wanted to say no. He wanted to tell her that Jennifer's entitlement deserved a hard boundary. But Emma had been through enough in the past year, and his ex-wife, with whom he'd always tried to maintain peace, would side with Jennifer. The story would become that Marcus was jealous, that he was trying to control Emma, that he couldn't stand seeing his daughter celebrated by other people. "We'll talk about it tonight," he said finally, "when I see you." After he hung up, Marcus sat in his office for a long time. Then he did something he rarely did. He texted his friend Derek. Derek was a lawyer, a good one. They'd met in business school and had stayed close through the years. Derek would know what his options were. The response came back within minutes, "Call me." Marcus did, and what Derek told him was both clarifying and deeply unsatisfying. Without explicit property damage or a criminal threat, police were unlikely to get involved. Trespassing charges were hard to prove when the person had come through the gate legitimately, and Emma did technically live there. If the situation escalated to violence or actual destruction, that was different. But a party? Jennifer would claim she had implicit permission through her relationship with Emma. The legal avenue was murky and expensive, and ultimately might cost him more in legal fees than it was worth. "What you could do," Derek said, "is turn off the water to the property. No water, no pool. The party kind of falls apart on its own." I can't just do that." "Why not? It's your property, your utility. You're not committing a crime, you're just deciding your pool isn't available for use." Marcus thought about this. It appealed to him. It was clean, non-violent, and elegant in its way. But it also felt like admitting defeat, like being forced into a position so unreasonable that he'd have to resort to sabotage. "Let me sleep on it," he said. But as the evening progressed, his anger didn't cool. If anything, it intensified. He called his ex-wife, Diane, to see if she knew about this. "Oh yes, Jennifer mentioned something about it," Diane said breezily. "I think it's sweet, actually, a real celebration." "Did she ask my permission to throw a party on MY property?" "Marcus, Emma lives there, and it's just a party. I don't understand why you're upset." "I'm upset because this is my home, Diane, my sanctuary, and Jennifer decided to use it without asking me. That's not okay." "You're being territorial," Diane said, and he could hear the irritation in her voice. "This is about Emma, not about your property." "No, it's about respect and boundaries and," he stopped himself, "never mind, it doesn't matter." By the time he went to bed, Marcus had made a decision. He would let Jennifer's party happen. He would be gracious. And then, tomorrow morning, before everyone arrived, he would ensure that the saltwater pool, Jennifer's entire centerpiece, would be dry. It was petty, he knew it was petty, but Jennifer had made it personal, and she was about to learn that lesson. Saturday morning arrived clear and bright, the kind of June day that felt like a promise. Marcus woke at 5 a.m. before the sun was fully up, before the world could interfere. He made coffee in the quiet kitchen and stood at the window, watching the light change from purple to gold. By 6, he was already at the water main. The shutoff valve was old but functional, buried in a concrete box near the property line, surrounded by years of accumulated leaves and dirt. He knelt down, removed the cover, and examined the mechanism. The valve was a wheel, corroded but turnable. He went to the garage and retrieved a wrench, then came back and fitted it over the valve stem. 1/4 turn would slow the water. 1 full turn would stop it completely. He stood there, wrench in hand, and allowed himself a moment of doubt. This wasn't who he was a reasonable person, a successful person, someone who solved problems through communication and planning, not through sabotage. But Jennifer had made her choice, and now he was making his. Marcus turned the valve. It resisted at first, decades of mineral deposits and corrosion fighting the movement. Then, with a sound like a groan, it gave. The water line to the property went silent. He'd done it. For the rest of the morning, Marcus tried to keep his day normal. He showered, dressed, made breakfast. He worked on his laptop in the office, responding to emails with a focus he didn't feel. At 7:30, Emma came downstairs, already in her bathing suit. "Morning, Dad," she said, kissing his cheek. "Thanks for letting Jennifer do this. It's going to be amazing." He wanted to tell her, wanted to warn her what was coming, but he didn't. Instead, he said, "I'm happy for you, sweetheart. It's going to be memorable." By 9:30, the property began transforming. Vendors started arriving, a catering company with warming stations and tables, a sound company with a DJ booth, a rental company with lounge chairs and umbrellas. Through his office window, Marcus watched them work, setting up for a party that would have no water. At 10, Jennifer arrived. She looked exactly as Marcus had expected, perfectly put together in a white linen outfit that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. Her blonde hair was swept back with a pair of designer sunglasses, and she moved through the property with the confidence of someone who'd already decided she owned it. She saw him and waved, that bright, fake smile full of teeth. "Marcus, morning, sunshine," she called out. "Isn't this going to be absolutely gorgeous?" He came out onto the deck, aware that Emma was watching, aware that every interaction was being cataloged and would be reported back to Diane. "It's quite a setup," he said neutrally. "I know, right? I pulled some strings, called in a few favors, only the best for Emma's graduation." Jennifer gestured expansively. "And that pool of yours, absolutely perfect. People are going to lose their minds." There was something in her tone that made Marcus's jaw tighten. That undertone of satisfaction, of knowing exactly what she was doing and enjoying it. She wasn't just throwing a party, she was proving something. Proving that she had the resources, the connections, the power to use his property and his daughter's celebration for her own aggrandizement. "I'm sure they will," Marcus said. Around 11, people started arriving. Cars lined the suburban street, Range Rovers, Teslas, Mercedes, a few vintage BMWs. People in designer beach wear, expensive sunglasses, Yeti coolers, and Tory Burch flip-flops. It was the kind of crowd that Jennifer curated, the right people, the successful people, the people worth being seen with. Marcus stayed in his office, watching through the window. He saw Emma talking excitedly to her friends, saw her pointing to the pool, saw her look for him occasionally with that expression that contained both gratitude and a hint of apology. At noon, the crowd had swelled to nearly 100. The DJ was playing upbeat pop. The catering company was setting out appetizers. People were spreading out on the lounge chairs, removing their cover-ups, slathering on sunscreen. And then at exactly 12:15 p.m., Jennifer's voice pierced through the music. "Okay, everyone, pool time. Emma, come on." Marcus watched from his window as Jennifer kicked off her sandals and walked toward the water, her hand extended toward Emma. He watched as Jennifer stepped onto the pool deck, tested the water with her toe, and then stopped. Even from a distance, he could read the confusion on her face. She crouched down, reached into the pool, straightened. Then she turned slowly, searching for Marcus. Their eyes met across 50 yards of manicured lawn. And she understood. The moment crystallized, just for an instant, into something clear and terrible. Jennifer's face shifted through stages. Confusion gave way to realization, which gave way to fury. She stood up, still dripping, and started walking toward the house, moving faster with each step, crossing the deck in a way that made several of the guests turn to look. Marcus went outside to meet her halfway. "What did you do?" she demanded, her voice low and filled with venom. "I turned off the water," Marcus said calmly. "It's my property, my utilities. I'm not hosting a party today." "You sabotaged my party," Jennifer said, her voice rising. "You sabotaged your daughter's party." "No, I shut down a party that was thrown on my property without my permission. That's a very different thing." "You're a coward, Marcus, a petty, jealous coward." He could see others watching now. Could see Emma, frozen in confusion. Could see Diane's best friend's face turning red with rage, or perhaps with the realization that her gambit hadn't worked the way she'd planned. "You knew what you were doing when you came here," Marcus said quietly. "You knew I hadn't agreed to this. You did it anyway, betting that I wouldn't make a scene because it would look bad for me. You were right. I'm the bad guy now, but at least I'm not a thief." "A thief? I'm not stealing anything, you absolute." "You stole access to my property. You stole the ability to use my water and my pool and my home. You did it deliberately, and you're angry because I found a way to push back that doesn't involve lawyers or conflict with my daughter's happiness." Jennifer's laugh was sharp as broken glass. "Oh, you think this is clever? You think turning off the water is a victory? All you've done is prove to everyone here what you actually are. A vindictive ex. A man so threatened by other people's generosity that he'd destroy his own daughter's day." "My daughter's day," Marcus said, "was already planned, in detail, with people she actually loves, before you decided to hijack it." But even as he said it, he could see the damage spreading. People were taking sides. Some were nodding. Yes, Jennifer was out of line, but others were shaking their heads, watching Marcus with something like disgust. Emma had approached, and her face was streaked with tears. "Dad, what did you do? Why would you do this?" "Because I'm trying to teach you something," Marcus said, and even as the words left his mouth, he knew they were a mistake. "I'm trying to show you that people like Jennifer—" "People like Jennifer," Emma interrupted, her voice shaking, "just wanted to celebrate you, and you destroyed it because you have an ego." It felt like a punch. All his careful planning, all his good intentions, rendered meaningless by this single moment of sabotage. Jennifer had been brilliant. She'd positioned her unauthorized party as an act of love toward Emma, and Marcus's response had looked like revenge. He'd played directly into the narrative she'd constructed. "Go inside," he said quietly, and went back to the house, aware that he'd just lost something he couldn't get back. Through the window, he watched the crowd begin to disperse. Some people tried to use the water from hoses, tried to fill buckets, tried to salvage the day. But a pool party without a pool is just sad people in swimwear on expensive furniture. Within an hour, most of the guests had left. Jennifer sat on a lounge chair, phone pressed to her ear, and Marcus could imagine exactly who she was calling. Diane, the lawyer, everyone who needed to know that Marcus Chen was an unhinged saboteur. Emma didn't come inside. She took refuge with a few loyal friends under one of the umbrellas, and she didn't look at Marcus once. His phone started buzzing. A text from Diane, "We need to talk. This is unacceptable." Another from his business partner, who'd somehow already heard, "Are you okay? I heard there's drama at your place." Another from his lawyer, "Call me immediately." But Marcus didn't call anyone. Instead, he sat at his desk, staring at nothing, understanding the full dimensions of what he'd just done. First, the legal threat. Diane's lawyer sent a letter demanding compensation for emotional distress and property damage caused by Marcus's malicious interference with a private social gathering. It was almost comedic in its audacity, as if Jennifer had the grounds to sue him for turning off the water on his own property. But it cost money to fight, which was the point. Then came the social consequence. Jennifer, it turned out, knew a lot of people who mattered. Within 48 hours, Marcus heard through various acquaintances that Jennifer had painted him as unstable, jealous of his ex-wife's new closeness with Emma, resentful of Jennifer's success. The narrative crystallized. Marcus was a man so threatened by his ex-wife's best friend that he'd sabotaged his own daughter's graduation celebration. The fact that the party was technically uninvited got lost in the retelling. Jennifer was generous and fun. Marcus was a petty, vindictive control freak. Emma, who'd always been close to her father, became distant. She still came for her scheduled time, but she was cold. Polite but cold. When they passed in the kitchen, her eyes didn't quite meet his. When he tried to explain his perspective, she'd say things like, "I don't want to talk about this," or "You made your choice." What made it worse was that Marcus's own perspective began to crack under the pressure. Alone late at night, he'd replay the moment, his hand on the valve, the certainty he'd felt, the clean satisfaction of sabotage. It had felt righteous in the moment. Now it felt impulsive, destructive, the action of a man he didn't recognize. The worst part wasn't the legal fight or the social fallout. The worst part was that Jennifer had known exactly how to push him, known exactly how to set up a situation where his only options were all terrible. And she'd been right. He'd chosen the option that made him look like a villain. 2 weeks after the party, Marcus received a call from Derek. "I'm going to give you some advice you won't want to hear," Derek said without preamble. "Great, go ahead." "You need to apologize." Marcus's entire body rejected the idea. "Apologize? For what? For turning off the water on my own property?" "No, for putting yourself in a position where your actions could be interpreted that way. For allowing Jennifer to bait you. For sabotaging your daughter's day, even if the intention was to sabotage Jennifer's party. For all of it." "She had it coming." "Maybe she did, I'm not arguing with you about that. But here's what I'm telling you as a friend. Your daughter is 17, she's been through enough. And right now she's caught between her father and her friend's mother, and her father just sabotaged a celebration in her honor. From her perspective, you're the bad guy. The question is, do you want to stay the bad guy?" Marcus didn't answer. "I'm going to tell you something else," Derek continued. "Jennifer isn't done. This was round one. She beat you because you played by her rules. If you keep fighting like this, she wins every time. But if you apologize to Emma, to Diane, to everyone, you take her narrative away. You stop being the saboteur and start being a reasonable person who made a mistake in a difficult situation. That's a much harder angle for her to work with." After they hung up, Marcus sat with this. The idea of apologizing felt wrong. It meant accepting responsibility for Jennifer's behavior, meant letting her win without consequences. But Derek was right about one thing. Emma was the collateral damage, and she didn't deserve that. He called Diane. "We need to talk," he said. "About Emma, about the party, about all of it." They agreed to meet at a coffee shop near the middle point between their houses. Neutral territory. When Diane arrived, she looked tired. There was a hardness around her eyes that hadn't been there before, the kind of weariness that came from having to mediate between people you cared about. "I owe you an apology," Marcus said before she could speak. "Not for my feelings about Jennifer's party, those are justified, but for how I handled it. I sabotaged a celebration in front of my daughter, and that was wrong. I taught her a lesson about revenge, and that's not the lesson I want to teach her." Diane's expression shifted slightly. "Do you know what Jennifer's been saying? She's been telling people that you're unstable, that this is a pattern for you." "I know, and I'm going to address it." Marcus paused. "But first I need to fix things with Emma." "She's hurt," Diane said quietly. "She feels like you betrayed her." "I know." "She also feels like you embarrassed her in front of 200 people. And she's trying to understand why her father would do something like that. And the only explanation Jennifer's given her is that you're threatened by strong women." Marcus felt his hands curl into fists, but he kept his voice even. "Jennifer set this up. She threw a party on my property without permission. She created a situation where my options were all bad. And then when I chose the least confrontational option I could think of, she spun it into a narrative about me being unstable." "I know that," Diane said. "I'm not stupid, Marcus. I can read between the lines. But Emma is 17, and she's going to believe the person who's in her ear more often than the person who sabotages her party." "It was a bitter truth, so what do I do?" "You rebuild trust. You apologize genuinely, and then you show her through action that you're the person she thought you were before all this." The apology came 3 days later. Marcus waited for Emma to arrive for her scheduled time, and when she got home from school, he asked her to sit down. She did, carefully, as if he might bite and wait for him to explain himself. "I'm sorry," he said. "I'm sorry that I turned off the water. I'm sorry that I did it at a time when it would hurt you. I'm sorry that I let my anger at Jennifer cloud my judgment. I'm sorry that I made you choose between being angry at her and being angry at me, when what you should have been was celebrating." Emma didn't say anything. "I was wrong," he continued. Not wrong about the way Jennifer treated me, but wrong about the way I responded, and I hurt you in the process, and that's unforgivable." "Why did you do it?" Emma asked, her voice small. "Because Jennifer manipulated me into a corner and I panicked. And because I'm proud and she made me feel powerless, so I grabbed onto something I could control. And it was selfish. I'm sorry." Emma cried then, and so did Marcus. She let him hold her, not because everything was okay, but because the apology was real and she needed her father to be the person she'd always believed he was. But the broader problem remained. Jennifer continued her campaign, continued to position herself as Emma's devoted mentor and friend. She called frequently, sent thoughtful gifts, invited Emma to parties and events. She was, in all practical ways, the cool, fun adult that Emma's life had space for. And Marcus, in his role as the parent who set boundaries and sometimes said no, became the boring, resentful one. It took another month of carefully navigating conversations with Diane, with Emma, with his lawyer, before Marcus truly understood what had happened. Jennifer hadn't just thrown a party on his property. She'd executed a perfectly calculated social attack designed to damage his relationship with his daughter while elevating her own status. And it had worked. The legal case eventually went nowhere. Jennifer's lawyer knew they had no real grounds, but the social damage was done. Marcus's friends and colleagues treated him differently. There was a wariness there, a hesitation. The guy who sabotaged his own daughter's party, you never knew what he might do. Marcus had learned a valuable, devastating lesson. Sometimes the saboteur wins twice, once through the initial act and once through the narrative that follows. August came hot and heavy. The pool had been restored to functionality in early July. Marcus had come home from work one evening to find the main water line already turned back on. He'd examined the valve and found it slightly turned, as if someone else had access to it. He hadn't turned it back off. Instead, he'd changed the gate code to something new and started working with a security consultant to upgrade the property's surveillance. He'd also begun documenting everything, every interaction with Jennifer, every concerning comment from Emma, every piece of evidence that Jennifer's interest in his daughter was calculated rather than genuine. Derek thought he was being paranoid. "She won the round," Derek said over drinks on a Thursday evening in late August. "Why would she push it further?" "Because she can," Marcus replied. "Because winning once isn't enough for someone like Jennifer. She needs to establish dominance. She needs to make sure I understand that she's the victor and I'm the loser." That's a dark way to look at it. That's the only way to look at it if you're paying attention. Marcus turned out to be right. In the first week of September, Emma asked if she could throw a small party for her friends before they all scattered to different colleges. Just 30 people. Something low-key. Just pizza and a bonfire in the backyard. No pool party. Emma had learned her lesson about water-based celebrations on Marcus's property. Marcus, trying to be the supportive father, said yes immediately. Emma invited her close friends. Marcus knew most of them. Good kids. The kind who were excited about college and still had that open quality that 17-year-olds occasionally possessed. They set up chairs around a fire pit. Someone brought a guitar. They roasted marshmallows and talked about late-night dorm adventures and roommate conflicts that hadn't happened yet. Marcus stayed inside, visible but not intrusive, letting Emma have her night. Around 9 o'clock, cars started arriving. Marcus recognized the first one, Jennifer's Range Rover. He went to the window and watched as Jennifer emerged with several women he didn't recognize. Then another car arrived, and another. Within 15 minutes, his daughter's intimate graduation party had become a full-scale gathering of Jennifer's friends. Emma looked confused at first, then delighted, then gradually squeezed out. Marcus watched as Jennifer took over, as she introduced Emma to important people, as she positioned herself as the cool mom who understood young people better than their actual parents did. She had wine and better snacks than pizza. She had stories about her own youth that made her sound dangerous and fun. By 10 o'clock, Emma's friends were less interested in talking to each other and more interested in listening to Jennifer and her crew. Marcus's jaw tightened. This wasn't accidental. Jennifer had somehow found out about the small party and decided to appropriate it, the same way she'd appropriated the pool bash. He went outside. "Jennifer, can I talk to you for a minute?" he asked, keeping his voice pleasant for Emma's sake. Jennifer excused herself from a conversation with one of her friends. and followed him to the far side of the lawn. "This is Emma's party," he said quietly. "These are her friends, not—" "I know," Jennifer interrupted. "Emma texted me and invited me. She wanted me to come celebrate with her. Is that a problem?" "Emma texted you at some point, but this," he gestured to the assembled crowd, "wasn't what was invited. You brought a dozen of your friends to your daughter's intimate graduation celebration." "I brought people who love Emma, people who are excited about her, people who could give her perspective on life and career and—" "Jennifer, stop. You know exactly what you're doing. You're not here for Emma. You're here to remind me who has more power, more charm, more pull with her than I do." Jennifer smiled. It was not a kind smile. "Marcus, I'm here because Emma invited me. If the fact that people like me more than they like you bothers you, that's not really my problem." She walked away before he could respond. Marcus stood in the darkness, his hands shaking with anger, and underneath it, something worse: fear. Because Jennifer was right about one thing, Emma clearly liked her more. Emma had texted her the details of this supposedly intimate celebration. Emma had invited her, welcomed her, given her access. That night, after Jennifer and her entourage had left, Marcus tried to talk to Emma about it. "You invited Jennifer to a party you were throwing for your friends." "She's my friend too," Emma said defensively. "Why shouldn't she be here?" "Because she has a pattern of appropriating things that don't belong to her, and I'm concerned that she's—" "She's what? Being nice to me, being interested in my life." "She's trying to undermine our relationship." Emma's face closed down. "Not everything is about you, Dad. Not everything is a conspiracy. Sometimes people are just nice. Sometimes people just like spending time together." But Marcus could hear it in her voice, the doubt, small but present, that her father might be right about something. And then immediately after that, the dismissal of that doubt, the reassurance she was giving herself that Jennifer was good, that Jennifer was just being nice. It was exactly the kind of psychological maneuvering that made Marcus's skin crawl. He backed off, started planning a different approach. He hired a private investigator, something he felt slightly sick about, but which seemed increasingly necessary. Over the course of 2 weeks, the investigator produced a detailed report on Jennifer Hartley's social media history, her business practices, her relationships. What emerged was a pattern. Jennifer was not, as she presented herself, a generous and successful real estate agent. She was a woman who built relationships with people, particularly younger people or people in vulnerable positions, and then used those relationships to her advantage. There were complaints from former employees at her agency about her management style. There were social media posts that had been deleted, but which the investigator had screenshots of, showing Jennifer making comments about young women that ranged from condescending to genuinely inappropriate. Most damning was a lawsuit from 2015, settled confidentially, involving a college-aged intern at her real estate office and allegations of inappropriate workplace relationships. The details were sealed, but the existence of it was a pattern marker. Marcus read the report and felt sick. This wasn't just about Jennifer being rude and inappropriately boundary crossing. This was about a woman with a documented history of inappropriate relationships with younger people, now focusing intensely on his 17-year-old daughter. He called Derek immediately. "I need advice," Marcus said, "and I need you to be honest with me about whether I'm being paranoid or whether this is actually a serious threat." Derek listened to everything: the party appropriations, Emma's growing closeness to Jennifer, the investigator's report. When Marcus finished, Derek was quiet for a long moment. "Okay," Derek said finally. "You're not paranoid, and this is serious. But it's also complicated because Jennifer hasn't done anything technically illegal. She's been friendly to your daughter. She's been kind. From a legal standpoint, there's nothing here that would stand up in court or that would justify you taking protective action. But socially, you need to document everything and be very careful about how you present this to Emma. Because if you come at her with accusations about Jennifer based on this report, and if Jennifer finds out, Jennifer will position you as a paranoid, controlling father who's spying on your daughter's friends. And given the narrative, that's already established." Derek didn't need to finish the sentence. Marcus understood. The narrative was already set. Marcus was the saboteur, the jealous ex, the control freak. Adding accusations, no matter how well-founded, would just confirm that narrative. So I'm supposed to just watch her build this relationship. You're supposed to be a present, loving parent. You're supposed to set clear boundaries. You're supposed to make sure Emma knows that your door is always open if she ever needs to talk about anything uncomfortable. And you're supposed to trust that the foundation you've built with your daughter over 17 years is stronger than whatever Jennifer is trying to do. And if it's not, then we'll deal with that when it happens. But right now, you don't have a case. You have a pattern and a concern, and going nuclear on that concern will only hurt your daughter. That night, Marcus did something that was both harder and easier than any of the things he'd done so far. He called Jennifer. "I want to propose a truce," he said without preamble. There was a pause, then, "I'm listening. Emma is caught between us. You and I both care about her, even if our motivations are very different. And I want to propose that we establish some clear boundaries so that she doesn't have to play mediator between two adults who don't like each other." "What kind of boundaries?" Jennifer asked, and Marcus could hear the smile in her voice. She was enjoying this, his surrender dressed up as diplomacy. "Family time with Emma stays family. If she invites you to something, that's one thing. But you don't show up uninvited, and you don't use her events as an opportunity to expand your own social circle." "I think Emma is old enough to decide who she wants to spend time with," Jennifer said. "She is, but she's also 17. And part of being a parent and an adult in her life is respecting the appropriate boundaries for that developmental stage." "How very clinical, Marcus. You sound like a parenting book." "I'm trying very hard to be the bigger person here." "Well, congratulations on your mediocrity," Jennifer said and hung up. Marcus set the phone down and realized that the truce was dead before it had started. Jennifer had no interest in boundaries because boundaries limited her access to Emma, and Emma was increasingly useful to her. He'd made a mistake calling her, he'd shown his hand, and now Jennifer knew exactly what he was afraid of. What he didn't know was that Jennifer had already made her next move. What he didn't know was that his phone, his email, and his physical security had already been compromised. What he didn't know was that Jennifer wasn't just trying to poison his relationship with Emma. She was preparing to destroy his professional reputation as well. Marcus opened his email at work to find a message from the HR department with the subject line, "Urgent, serious workplace conduct complaint." His stomach dropped before he even opened it. The complaint came from someone named Tasha Williams, claiming that Marcus had engaged in inappropriate conduct during a company retreat 2 months earlier. The specifics were vague. She alleged he'd made her uncomfortable and that he'd touched her in ways that made her question her safety. It was entirely fabricated. Marcus had met Tasha at the retreat, a junior analyst who'd been friendly and professional. He'd never been alone with her, had never touched her inappropriately, had never done anything that could be reasonably construed as harassment. But the allegation was filed with HR, and that meant everything stopped. His access to sensitive projects was immediately revoked. He was placed on a paid administrative leave pending an investigation. His email and all his company communications were seized. Security escorted him from the building. It was a nightmare playing out in real time. That evening, Marcus sat in Derek's office, everything suddenly feeling unreal. "Do you know who Tasha Williams is?" Marcus asked. "More importantly," Derek said, "I need you to tell me every single interaction you had with her." Marcus did. Every conversation, every meal, every moment they were in the same room. He documented it all as accurately as he could remember. Derek listened and took notes. "This is obviously a setup," Derek said finally. "But why? Who would do this?" "Your ex-wife. Diane wouldn't do this to me." "Jennifer." Marcus felt it click into place. The timing, the vagueness, the way the allegations were just credible enough to require an investigation. Jennifer would have known about the retreat. Jennifer was close enough to Diane to possibly know details about who worked with Marcus. "How?" Marcus asked. "How would she even connect with this person? How would she convince her to file a false complaint?" "Let me ask around," Derek said grimly. What Derek discovered over the next few days was chilling. Tasha Williams didn't exist. Or rather, she existed in the sense that there was a background to her, an online presence, a history at the company. But deeper digging revealed that most of her background was fabricated, created sometime in the past 6 months with impressive attention to detail. Her LinkedIn profile, her work history, her educational background, all of it was fake. Someone had created an entire person to accuse Marcus of sexual harassment. "This is sophisticated," Derek told him. "This isn't someone getting revenge. This is someone with resources and expertise." "Jennifer could hire someone to do this," Marcus said. "Yes, she could, or someone with access to better resources than Jennifer has. This requires technical knowledge, legal knowledge, understanding of HR protocols. This is beyond what a real estate agent would typically be capable of." Unless she hired someone. Unless she hired someone, Derek agreed. The investigation into the allegations took 6 weeks. During that time, Marcus was isolated from his professional community, his reputation under active assault. Rumors spread about what he'd allegedly done. They always do. The specifics got worse with each retelling. By the 3rd week, he was apparently a serial predator. By the 4th week, he'd allegedly targeted multiple women at the company. The truth didn't matter. The narrative had momentum. Emma, of course, heard about it. Emma heard about it through her friends and through school gossip and through Jennifer, who positioned herself as the protective friend, horrified at the allegations, supportive but realistic about the situation. Emma stopped returning his calls. When he finally managed to speak to her, her voice was cold in a way he'd never heard before. "Did you do it?" she asked. "Did you actually do what they're saying?" "No," Marcus said. "I promise you, Emma, I didn't do any of it. It's been fabricated." "How do you know?" "Because I know myself, and because I know the situation. This is a setup, honey. Someone is trying to damage me professionally and personally." "Who would do that?" Marcus couldn't answer. He couldn't accuse Jennifer without sounding paranoid, controlling, like the exact thing Jennifer had positioned him as, a man so threatened by other people that he'd destroy them. "I'm working with my lawyer to prove it," he said instead. "But I need you to believe me. I need you to know who I am." "I don't know who you are anymore," Emma said, and then hung up. The investigation concluded 5 weeks and 6 days after the original complaint. Not with Marcus being exonerated. That would have been too clear, too helpful. Instead, it concluded with the classic non-conclusion. Insufficient evidence to substantiate the allegations, but also no evidence of malicious intent on the part of the accuser. Which meant Tasha Williams disappeared from the company records entirely. Which meant no charges were pressed. Which meant there was technically nothing to vindicate Marcus, but also nothing to definitively prove he was guilty. It was the perfect outcome for Jennifer. Doubt cast, damage done, no accountability. Marcus's career was functionally over. Some colleagues would work with him again. Others wouldn't return his calls. The company asked him to resign, offering a severance that came with an NDA preventing him from discussing the allegations. He took it. He had no choice. A drawn-out legal battle would only extend the nightmare. But the real damage wasn't to his career. The real damage was that Diane, faced with a daughter who was now convinced that her father was a sexual predator, and a man who was now a pariah in his professional community, made a decision. She called him on a Thursday evening to inform him of it with the clinical tone of someone who'd already resolved to do something terrible. "I'm requesting a custody modification," she said. "Emma has expressed that she no longer feels safe with you, given the recent allegations." "The allegations are fabricated." "Regardless, Emma feels unsafe, and that's enough. My lawyer will be in touch." "Diane, this is Jennifer. You know it's Jennifer." There was a pause. "I know you've had a difficult time, but I have to put my daughter first. Right now, she needs stability and support. She needs to know that I'm protecting her." "From what? From me? I haven't done anything." "From the uncertainty. From the situation. From having to navigate a relationship with a father who's under investigation for sexual harassment while the internet is saying awful things about him." She hung up before he could respond. The custody battle that followed was brutal. Jennifer didn't participate directly, but she didn't need to. Diane was protective of Emma, and Emma, coached, perhaps intentionally, perhaps just through the osmotic absorption of Jennifer's narrative, had convinced herself that her father was dangerous. Evidence that Marcus had been falsely accused didn't matter in family court. Emma's feelings were what mattered, and Emma felt unsafe. Emma felt betrayed. Emma no longer wanted to live in her father's house. By October, custody of Emma had been transferred primarily to Diane, with limited visitation for Marcus. He was required to go to therapy, to take a sexual harassment course, to basically prove his trustworthiness to a system that was primed to believe the worst of him. Jennifer had not just won. Jennifer had achieved victory so complete that it barely looked like victory at all. She destroyed Marcus's relationship with his daughter, his career, and his reputation, all while maintaining her position as the concerned family friend, the supportive presence in Emma's life, the adult who had Emma's back. Marcus sat in Derek's office on a cold November afternoon, completely hollowed out. "I want to sue her," Marcus said. "For everything. I want to destroy her the way she's destroyed me." "We don't have evidence," Derek said gently. "We have suspicions and a pattern, but we don't have proof that Jennifer hired someone to create a false identity and file a false complaint. And even if we did, she'd have someone else do it, someone removed enough from her that the connection would be untraceable." "So she wins." "I know it doesn't feel like this, but you're not completely finished. Emma will grow up. Emma will eventually realize what happened, and when she does..." "I don't know if I can wait for that. I don't know if I can survive that." Derek didn't have an answer. But what Derek didn't know was that Marcus was about to get one. What neither of them knew was that someone had been watching the entire situation unfold. Someone who had their own reasons for wanting to see Jennifer Hartley exposed. Diane Reeves, Marcus's ex-wife, sat in a coffee shop in late November and did something she'd been avoiding for weeks. She called Jennifer. "We need to talk," Diane said. "Not about Emma, about you." They met at a neutral location, a restaurant Diane knew Jennifer wouldn't be likely to run into anyone important. And Diane, for the first time in the months since Emma had moved primarily into her custody, allowed herself to really examine what had happened. The fake allegations, the perfectly timed destruction of Marcus's career, the way Emma had come home with specific stories about Marcus's controlling behavior after spending time with Jennifer, the way Jennifer had always been the supportive voice in the background, never pushing, just available. Diane had been so focused on supporting her daughter that she'd missed what was actually happening. "You fabricated sexual harassment allegations against Marcus," Diane said bluntly, "to manipulate custody." Jennifer didn't deny it. She smiled slightly, which was perhaps worse than a denial would have been. "I did what was necessary to protect Emma from a man who was clearly unsuitable as a parent. He's a good father, you know he's a good father. He's a man with a vindictive streak and a control problem. He sabotaged Emma's graduation party. Because you threw it without asking him. Emma lives there half the time. I had implicit permission." "No," Diane said quietly. "You didn't, and now I understand why he responded the way he did. It wasn't about the party. It was about boundaries, and then you crossed them further and further and further until Marcus was so cornered that he did something desperate. And then you used that desperation as justification for destroying him." Jennifer's composure slipped slightly. "So what? You want to apologize for your daughter's choice to live with you. You want me to apologize for being present in her life. I want you to admit what you've done so that I can help Emma understand what actually happened. Emma will never believe you. Emma knows the truth. Emma knows that her father is innocent of the allegations you fabricated." "Can you prove that?" Jennifer asked, and her smile returned, confident, untouchable. "I'm very careful, Diane, very careful indeed. Whatever I may or may not have done, it would be very difficult to prove." Diane left that conversation shaken. She drove home, picked up her phone, and did something that surprised herself. She called Derek Sinclair. Derek listened to everything. He listened to Diane's confession of how Jennifer had systematically undermined Marcus, how Diane had been a willing participant in Marcus's destruction, how the entire situation had been orchestrated. When she finished, Derek said, "I need you to repeat everything you just told me to a lawyer, preferably one who specializes in false allegations and custody fraud, and I need you to be prepared to testify against Jennifer if it comes to that." "Will Marcus take me back?" Diane asked. "I don't know, but that might be less important than stopping Jennifer from doing this to someone else." The lawsuit that followed was devastating for Jennifer. With Diane's testimony, the shape of the fraud became clear. Jennifer had indeed hired someone, a private investigator with expertise in creating false digital identities, to fabricate the entire Tasha Williams persona. The investigator, once questioned by actual legal authorities, gave up Jennifer in approximately 45 seconds. He was facing serious federal charges for his part in the scheme, and Jennifer was far too powerful to go down with him. Jennifer faced charges for conspiracy, fraud, and filing false reports. Her real estate license was revoked. Her reputation, carefully cultivated over 2 decades, collapsed in the span of 2 weeks. But it was the civil lawsuit, Marcus's suit against her for damages, that truly destroyed her. Testimony revealed the full scope of Jennifer's predatory pattern. Older employees talked about her inappropriate behavior. Former interns described uncomfortable situations. A woman came forward about the 2015 situation that had been settled confidentially, and she filed a new lawsuit, the statute of limitations having been extended. Jennifer, who had positioned herself as the protector of young women, was revealed to be something far more sinister. And Emma, sitting in a courtroom or watching through news coverage, finally began to understand what her father had been trying to tell her all along. The apology came in January, almost a year after the original pool party. Emma came to Marcus's apartment on a Tuesday evening, her face streaked with tears, and she said, "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I believed her. I believed everything she said about you, and I helped her, and I don't know how to." "You were 17, Marcus interrupted. "You were 17 and you were manipulated by an adult predator. That's not your fault." "But I chose to believe her over you." "Because she was strategic about it. She made you feel special. She made you feel like you were part of an exclusive club. That's what people like her do." Emma cried against her father's shoulder, and Marcus held her, and they both wept for the year that had been lost, for the trust that had been broken, for the damage that had been done. "I want to come home," Emma said. "To your house. I want to live with you again." The custody modification took 3 months. By April, Emma was back in her father's house, back in the routine they'd built together. The pool, which had been closed all winter, was reopened. The first time Emma swam in it after her return, Marcus sat on the deck and watched her with an expression that contained both relief and a kind of residual grief that he knew would never completely go away. Jennifer's trial concluded in May with guilty verdicts on all counts. Her sentencing came in July: 5 years in federal prison, substantial fines, and a restitution order to Marcus that was ultimately uncollectible given the other judgments against her. But the real consequence for Jennifer wasn't the legal system. The real consequence was irrelevance. The woman who had built her entire identity on being important, on being enviable, on being the person everyone wanted to be around, that woman was now pariah. Former friends wouldn't return her calls. Social invitations disappeared. The women in her orbit who had tolerated her for years suddenly found reasons to distance themselves. Jennifer, who had orchestrated the destruction of a man's career and a father-daughter relationship, had been destroyed in return. But for Marcus, the victory tasted like ashes. He sat in Derek's office in August, 3 months after Jennifer's conviction, and he struggled to articulate something he felt but couldn't quite name. "I won," Marcus said. "You did." "Emma's back, my name is cleared. Jennifer is going to prison, legally, professionally, socially. I won on every front. But I'm hollow. I feel like I've been scooped out, and I look at Emma and I see how scarred she is from all this, and I know that I contributed to that scar. I turned off the water. I sabotaged the party. I started this whole thing, and yes, Jennifer escalated it in ways that were unconscionable, but I could have handled it differently." Derek leaned back in his chair. "Do you think it would have been different if you'd handled it differently?" "I don't know, maybe. Maybe Jennifer would have found another angle. Maybe she would have done this anyway. And maybe you'd still be in the situation you're in now, watching your daughter get closer to a predator, unable to do anything about it because Jennifer was smart enough not to cross any legal lines. Is that supposed to make me feel better? It's supposed to make you understand something. Jennifer was always going to destroy you. That was always the end point. You just chose to fight back instead of accepting destruction. And yes, that escalated things. But accepting destruction wouldn't have saved your relationship with your daughter. It just would have meant you both went down with her." Marcus absorbed this. It didn't make him feel better, but it made him understand something fundamental about how predators worked. They didn't care about proportionality. They didn't care about fairness. They cared about power and control, and they would use whatever means necessary to maintain both. Emma starts college in September, Marcus said finally. And I want her to actually start college, not carry this trauma with her, not be suspicious of adults, not be afraid of relationships. I want her to recover from all this. That's going to take time. I know. The story could have ended there. The traditional resolution, the villain vanquished, the hero and his daughter reunited. But there was one more chapter, one more moment that crystallized everything. In late August, Marcus was at his house preparing for Emma to leave for college. He was in his office when his phone rang, an unknown number. He almost didn't answer, but something made him pick up. "Mr. Chen," a woman's voice tentative, "this is Tasha Williams." His entire body went rigid. "The real Tasha Williams," the woman continued. "I work in medical administration. I don't know you, I've never met you, but I've been contacted by Jennifer Hartley's lawyer, and I've been shown documents that have my name on them, and I'm calling to tell you that I had nothing to do with any allegations against you, and I'm very sorry that my name was used this way." Marcus couldn't speak for a moment. "Are you still there?" the real Tasha Williams asked. Yes, I'm sorry. Thank you for calling. Thank you for," he stopped, overcome. "That means a lot." "I hope your life gets better," she said quietly and then hung up. Marcus sat in his office in the golden light of late afternoon, and he understood finally what Derek had been trying to tell him. That sometimes there are people in the world who are willing to do the right thing, even when it costs them something. That sometimes justice does come, not through the legal system or through revenge, but through the simple act of people choosing to tell the truth. He called Emma downstairs. "Come here," he said. "I want to tell you something." Emma sat beside him, and Marcus recounted the phone call. And as he told her about the real Tasha Williams calling to support him, to validate him, to tell him that the accusation against him was false, he watched something shift in his daughter's face. The last remaining doubt dissolved, and in its place came peace. The pool glimmers in the late afternoon sun, clear and perfect and beautiful. Emma is at the edge of the diving board, ready for one final jump before her father drives her to college. Her mother is there too, Deanne, who has rebuilt her relationship with Marcus from the rubble of Jennifer Hartley's betrayal. They are not getting back together, but they are friends again. They are family again. Marcus watches his daughter dive, watches her break the surface of the water, watches her emerge laughing and alive. He thinks about the spiral that began with a single act of sabotage, that spiraled into destruction and deception and loss. He thinks about how a moment of anger can create cascading consequences that reverberate through years. He thinks about the cost of victory when victory requires someone else's annihilation. But he also thinks about this, about his daughter's laughter, about the fact that she's safe, about the fact that she knows who he is and chooses to love him anyway. Jennifer Hartley is beginning her prison sentence at a federal facility in West Virginia. By all accounts, she is struggling to adapt. The woman who spent her life curating an image of effortless success is now, truly and finally, nothing special. But that's not the victory Marcus thinks about anymore. The victory he thinks about is this quiet afternoon, his daughter alive and safe and whole, his ex-wife beside him, no longer an enemy, his reputation restored, his career slowly rebuilding through careful work and the slow resurrection of trust. He'd sabotaged a pool party and started a war. But in the end, what saved him wasn't his acts of sabotage. It was the love of his daughter, the integrity of his ex-wife, and the simple insistence on truth from a stranger named Tasha Williams.